are parliamentarian. I like it.
Yeah. Okay, we're good to go.
All right, we will call to order the meeting of the City of Ferndale Planning Commission for February 7th. Holy cow, February 7th, 2018. We are waiting on one more commissioner to join us. She is on her way, so we're going to move the agenda around just a little bit to keep things moving, but we will begin with our roll call.
Azar. Brazen.
Here.
Cassio.
Here.
Farr. Gurink.
Here.
Kelly. Martin.
Here.
Williamson. Baker.
Here. Commissioners Farr, Kelly, and Williamson let us know that they would not be here this evening. Is there a motion to excuse them?
So moved.
Second.
It's a motion by Councilman Martin with a second by Commissioner Brazen. Do we, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. Motion passes. Commissioner Azar is on her way. If for some reason she's not here in the next 15 minutes, we can reevaluate, but at this point I do expect her to attend. We will move to approval of the agenda. I don't know if I'm allowed to suggest a change in order of the agenda. I probably can't make a motion to that effect, but I would make a suggestion to someone that we make a slight rearrangement and postpone our elections until Commissioner Azar is here.
I'd move that we postpone the elections and new business until we have a quorum.
Second.
Thank you. That was a motion from Councilman Martin with a second from Commissioner Cassio. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. That motion passes. All right, so we will move first to our call to audience. Call to audience is an opportunity for anyone in the audience to address the Planning Commission on anything that's not on the agenda. When we get to the agenda items, there'll be a chance to ask questions or offer comments at that time. But if there's anyone who wanted to talk about anything that's not on the agenda, you can come on up to the podium and state your name and address, and you've got 3 minutes to talk to us about anything you'd like. All right. We will move on then. As we've stated, we've put a slight postponement on new business. I would suggest that as we move to our discussion items that we begin with 6B, which is residential zoning ordinance amendments discussion. I know that there are a number of people here for the M1 industrial subdistrict discussion, and I know Commissioner Azar is on that tour. Hi, she's here. I didn't want to start anything without you. All right, 30-second timeout for you to get your stuff out, so we're going to pop back up to elections then. What's that?
You want to unmove it?
Well, the motion was that we
Motion was
moved
just
it
to
pending
postpone it
a
until
quorum.
there's
Now that we have
Yeah.
a quorum,
Now we've got a
go
quorum,
back.
so we'll just pop back up to elections. That's okay. I was going to suggest that we move to officially reorder the agenda, but we didn't have to. Glad everyone's here safe and sound today. We keep seeming to have big snow events on Planning Commission nights. All right, we will move back to item number 3, our elections. And we postponed this from our last meeting, and the Planning Commission is making 3 appointments tonight, Chair, Vice Chair, and BZA.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Justin, anything you want to introduce for elections? Because I know you've had some correspondence with Commissioner Farr.
Sure. So Vice Chair Farr was not able to attend this evening. He did express through email and through phone call that he'd be interested in continuing to serve as Vice Chair if someone re-nominated him this evening. So, and Ian Williamson, Commissioner Williamson, still would like to be the liaison to the BZA as well.
I would move that we unanimously approve a slate of Commissioner Baker as chair, Commissioner Farr as vice chair, and Ian Williamson, thank you, as BZA.
So you would move the nomination?
I would move the nomination for the whole slate.
Second. Thank you. So that's a motion by, I almost said Commissioner, Councilman Martin, with a second by Commissioner Azar. I accept my nomination, and we've had correspondence related to the acceptance from the 2 who are absent with sick children tonight. Any other nominations or discussion on the motion before we vote? In that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay. I'm going to tell Sarah, second year. And we're going to rival her and Krista's tenure. It's going to take a long time, though. Alrighty, we will move. We've already done call to audience. We'll move into our new business then. So our new business item this evening is a housing development on East Bennett Street. We've got a site plan review. We'll begin with an introduction from our city staff. We'll then have any information that the applicant wants to share. And then if there's anyone here who has questions or comments on that site plan, we can take them at that time. So we'll start with Erin.
Great, thank you. So this is a multifamily housing development on East Bennett. It's going to be located on a currently vacant parcel, just west of West End Street. There are a total of 8 residential units going into this. 2 of the buildings are going to be side by side next to each other, 4 in each unit. It is zoned R3, so single and multifamily residential units are accepted in this area. And other things, there are a couple of conditions that we're waiting to hear from the applicant for regarding the existing tree canopy and other landscaping, as well as accessibility. And that's honestly really all I have to introduce for it. So if the applicant would like to come up and present.
Thank you. Do they have a couple documents up there?
Yeah. Is it already pulled up on here? It's right here.
I think there. Is that East Bennett SPA?
Okay. And we have a clicker right here. We can move it forward and backwards. And you should be all set.
Thanks, Erin.
Hi, good
Hi,
evening,
welcome.
Commission. Thank you. Thank you for your time and consideration. For those of you that don't remember me from last time, my name is Stephen Johnston. I'm one half of the SJR partners who was bringing the proposal before you guys today. And I just want to show you a little bit, an aerial view of where the area is, if you're not familiar with this corner of Ferndale. So that's 8 Mile, and then we have the railroad tracks that run to the west of us, with West End being east. This is the vacant lot. Where that white fence is, that's the house that I bought in 2013. So I've had this property behind me vacant since 2013 when I moved in, and I've been told that it's been vacant for quite a long time. And then we also purchased, so I purchased those 4 lots, and then my partner purchased the lots with the vacant garage right there, that white garage.
So the white garage is not related to the brick house that's next to it?
It is not.
Separate, okay, thank you.
No, our property goes up to the end of that white garage.
Okay, thank you.
So we came before you to have the property rezoned, being that it's so close to the commercial backing of 8 Mile. We thought this project could be a good buffer between the Ford Heights subdivision and the 8 Mile commercial area. There are some new developments, as you see on the block, who don't conform with the city plan with the garage in the front. Our proposal does have the garage in the back. But, you know, because there is some new development on the street, we thought this area could serve to use some redevelopment and hopefully spur some more growth in the corner of Ferndale over there. So we've partnered with Krieger and Klatt, and I'd like to turn it over to Jeff, who can speak to some of the concerns that were raised at the last meeting, and then any of the comments that the city had. So, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. Jeff Klatt with Krieger Klatt Architects. We also appreciate all the feedback you provided last time over your discussion item several months ago. So we do have a brief architectural presentation we'll walk you through. We made some minor adjustments to the plan back then, but it's relatively remained the same from the site plan to floor plan. We've worked on the elevations in the meantime and made some adjustments to the site, like I mentioned. Make sure I understand how to scroll through here. Oh, okay. So this is our proposed site plan. As was mentioned, we do have 2 buildings on the site. They're identical. The building footprint is about 2,807 square feet, and the garage is about 943 square feet behind the units, as Stephen mentioned. So the whole goal was to keep the parking concealed behind the units, bring them to the street to promote pedestrian activity. So from a parking standpoint or site access standpoint, you enter at the driveway right here. So that'll link you around to the back for the parking in the garage. So we do have 1 parking space per unit. So 8 parking spaces, 8 units. And then there's additional parking on the side right here. The last time we presented, this parking was along the western side, but we felt that it'd be better to turn the parking inward to avoid lights shining to the neighbor's property. So now it faces inward. Then we do have as you see in the landscape plan, we've got a evergreen shrub row along that side to help buffer it too. We do have a wooden fence to the back to shield the neighbors, any headlights, and then the same thing on the western side. Western eastern side, there's a hedgerow as well too. By splitting the buildings,
I'm sorry, is it hedgerow and a fence, or just the hedgerow?
yeah, the fence is along the northern property line,
Okay.
and the hedge is along the eastern and western only. We felt that was a bit softer on the sidelines and bringing that fence all the way down.
All right, thank
So
you.
it'll be green all year round and help to shield any type of light going off-site. So we chose to pull the buildings apart mainly to help break up the massing. We looked at one large building on the site, but it seemed too heavy for the street. So by splitting the buildings, it was more respectful of the surrounding homes. So we do have the primary entry along the front, and there's small patio space too between the building and the sidewalk area. By splitting the buildings, there's also a nice green space that created too for the neighbors, bike racks, possible barbecue grills, just a nice green space between the buildings.
How wide is that green space between the buildings?
That is a great question. Let me zoom in here. I think it's at the low point, or at the tightest point, it's about 12.7 feet, as I can see from here. And it probably goes up to about maybe 18 feet in between, give or take.
All right, and on this elevation, where are the dumpsters?
The trash is in the back corner, so that would be the northeast corner of the site.
And where does that lie in relation to the house on the property next door?
As you can see on the right here, this shape up here, that's the adjacent neighbor's home. I can go back to the photo too, it might help. There's a photo of the neighbor's home.
No, I saw the photo. I was trying to imagine where the dumpsters were.
Yeah, they're in that back corner, so they're quite a distance from the home.
And it's fenced in on the north side with hedgerows on the east.
Correct. And that'll be a full enclosure for that.
And a brick enclosure
Brick
around
enclosure. Okay, thank you.
the dumpster, right?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention the dumpster. Bear with me 1 second here. And this is our landscape plan, so it's pretty simple. We do have some trees in the right-of-way, some canopy trees, the Freeman maples, and like I mentioned, the evergreen shrubs on the side. And then there's some canopy trees in the middle between the buildings as well. And then just some perimeter plantings around the foundation of the building. This is the proposed floor plan. So like I said, each unit is identical. The first floor garage is about 995 square feet. The first floor overall is about 2,616. And then each unit's about 1,220 square feet. So as I mentioned, there's a primary entrance from the street, a lobby area, and you can go left or right into each unit, and there's a central staircase that'll lead you up to the second floor. There is also a staircase from the garage area up to the second floor as well. So 2-bedroom units, primary living spaces to the front of the building. Second floor is generally the same, a little bit larger because we were able to build over the garage space. So these units are about 1,700 square feet. And there's a small balcony to the front, which is about 62 square feet. So it's relatively small, maybe a few chairs, but nothing major on the balconies.
And there are no balconies off the back, correct?
No, there's no balconies to the back. Those are the bedrooms in the back here, so just some small windows. That's a good point, too. We're trying to avoid having these balconies look into the neighbors' yards beyond, so we try to keep that activity towards the street. And these are the proposed exterior renderings. So again, we're trying to respect the street from form as well as materials. So we have the peaked roof lines, which are very similar to the homes surrounding us. Again, too, as I mentioned, the massing of the form, there's 2 separate buildings, but it almost appears as if there's 4 different shapes here, 4 different buildings to help break that up again, too, to relate to the homes to the west. Some materials are consistent as well. Brick veneer. We do have some lap siding, which may be easier to see on these next renderings. see the metal balconies. So they're transitional in style. You know, there's traditional form, but the materials are a little bit more contemporary. Same thing with the glass that separates the two buildings. Asphalt shingle roofs, brick veneer, and on the sides you'll see some of the James Hardie lap siding, just to help break that up a bit. From a height standpoint, you know, we are compliant with the ordinance. We're only 26 feet to the midpoint, so that again is pretty consistent with the street. 9-foot ceiling heights, 8-foot window and door heights, so we're complementary. So just the other elevations. And then from a photometric or exterior light standpoint, we're compliant. All the lighting is on site. There's no spill across the lot lines. And they're just a building mounted lighting. So no poles or anything like that, just mounted to the building itself. And that's about it. So we can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I'm going to see if we've got any, before we take questions from the commission, I want to see if we've got anyone in the audience that had questions or comments on this. If you do, you're welcome to come on up to the podium. I'm happy to take questions or comments. You can just state your name and address for the record. Take about 3 minutes each. Yeah. Oh, sure.
I do want to address the comments that we received. I forgot to mention that too. So I spoke with our civil engineer that prepared the engineered plans.
Okay.
And so there was a question about the ADA parking space.
That was my question.
Okay. Let me see if I can get back to the slideshow. Just go down.
My question was about why it was positioned where it was, and if it was just because it was required on the site, or if any of these bottom floor units were going to really be accessible.
Well, they're all type B dwelling units.
Okay.
So they are accessible to some degree, and the finished floor is generally at grade. I mean, it's up slightly, but it's generally at grade. So we position it close to the primary entrance, which is the front door. But again, you can argue that the garage could also be an entry point as well. So that's the whole point of it being there. This is just shown too short. So the overall should be 16 feet for the space as well as the access aisle. So we're just going to lose a bit of the landscape area right here to make that compliant. So we'll be able to adjust the parking.
But in terms of how someone would use, the front door and the front landscaped area on the first floor, for example, we had someone who was living there who was in a wheelchair, had a walker, was needing to get in and out. That was kind of more my question was, in terms of, is there a step up? Are there 2 steps up? What's your landscaping material? Do you have like paving blocks that you need to navigate over? That was kind of the question.
No, not in this area. So if you were to, I guess, exit your vehicle into this space here, you get up onto the sidewalk. So I do believe we have a ramp right here. Mm-hmm. And then you could there's a sidewalk here, mm-hmm. which links to the front door. So again, there's no step here. I'm sorry about that. If you call it a ramp, it would lead you right to the front door. Mm-hmm. And then to the floor plan, it's hard to see it right there, but there's that little lobby right in the middle, and you can enter right into the left and right. And again, the height from the finished floor to grade is pretty minimal. Okay. And we can make sure it's compliant from an ADA standpoint to make sure that the slope is not too severe.
Yeah, thank you. That was my question. We have a lot of steps up to front doors in Ferndale, so whenever we build something new, I do a lot of questioning about how people can maneuver on first floors. We want people to be able to downsize and stay in Ferndale. And
does the chair want to make that a condition of the motion?
Not necessarily. Okay. I don't care to dictate building codes. And
all right.
Don't know enough about accessibility to specifically tell you what to do, but I do want to see. Thank you very much. That was actually my question.
Okay.
Sorry. I wanted to see if anyone from the audience has any questions or comments on this tonight. Okay. Other questions and comments on the site plan from the commission? Questions for staff or the applicant?
Yeah, through the chair. So noticing that for the eastern structure, there's the air conditioning units are external rather than facing that internal courtyard. Wondering the kind of thought process behind that. I think I showed it on that last one as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's a few things that we could do there. We could place all those condensing units within the courtyard itself. If you notice too, there's a bit of although the building has a peaked roof, the central portion is relatively flat. We could place the units up on the roof, but we could sneak them right in that courtyard where you're seeing them on the right.
Yeah, it's almost more like a mirror image instead
Yeah,
of a replicated image.
That makes a lot of sense.
I
Because
We
think
see
that is
us right in that
site condition,
backyard. Yeah.
that is our plan
I'd make
too.
that a condition.
From gas meters to electrical meters, that'll all be placed within that interior courtyard.
That was
That'll
one of my
clean that up.
I could see where your transformer was going in back, but I couldn't see where some of your meters were, so that was one of my questions.
Yeah, and
Anything
we
else?
still need to go through full engineering as well too, so some of these will get fleshed out as we advance.
Well, and just to be thoughtful about, if a meter needs to go somewhere visible, what do we do to try to mitigate some of that unsightliness?
And I did take the commission's advice and speak with some of my neighbors. And I
Oh, great.
was able to speak with every neighbor that is adjacent to the property, both in the front and the back, except for one. I did go to their house twice, and they were not able to answer their door.
Okay.
I got feedback from them. A lot of them were happy with the project, as long as the construction hours stayed normal with Ferndale's ordinances. But yeah, I did feel out all my neighbors that touched the property except for the one.
Thank you, and that might be why they're not here tonight, because they know what's going on and they feel informed.
And the neighbor that didn't answer the door, they were noticed to the hearing tonight?
I assume so. They were.
That's a question for Justin, yeah.
Not necessarily.
All right.
Commissioner Gurn?
Yeah, through the chair, another question I had was that existing fence on the west, it looks like it encroaches onto the property. Is that correct, that it's encroached onto the property and that's going to be removed as part of the development of the site?
I haven't spoken with that neighbor about the fence. The fence went up after we had already started these plannings.
Okay.
I'm talking about the one right there that you can see.
Yep, I saw that on the
And
site plan as well.
Yeah, it is probably about a foot onto the property. So, if we need to remove it, I'm sure we can work out putting it back up for them as well. I have not discussed it with him in particular.
That's where I believe some of the shrub screening is
Right.
going in on the
Yeah,
west
that's where
side.
we would have a row of shrubs.
Okay. And then the last question I had was as far as the extent of the asphalt. I noticed there's discussion of that. Is it 1 foot, I believe, from the property line where the parking can go? I couldn't quite tell on the site plan where it says the extent of the asphalt is on there, and if that's in compliance for the city. I don't know if that's a question for Justin or applicant.
So on which side or all sides?
On the north portion of I guess it's the drive lanes to the garages and to the dumpster,
Right.
the limit of the asphalt pavement.
Yeah. So that would fit within the current bounds of the ordinance.
A foot off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just couldn't tell on this if it's. Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Looks like it's pointing to the same place as the screening fence. So.
Right.
All right. So it's a foot off.
Other questions at the moment? Other questions from the table?
Yes, just through the chair, could you just describe the fencing between the buildings?
I don't think we're going to have any fencing in the middle.
Or the
between
gates?
the
Yeah,
two.
I'm sorry, the gates.
Oh, yeah, so we probably have some sort of gate that can latch close to get into the back area. But then between the two buildings, that would be kind of open. There'd be some pipe racks, maybe a picnic table or two that can be used by the people that have the homes or that have the residents. Is that you're asking?
Yeah, I thought I saw like gates and a secured space in between. I just questioning if it's open or what it's constructed of and the general feel of it.
If this gate right here, we just point up on the screen.
Oh, okay.
It would just be consistent with the balcony if we're using steel or an aluminum. It'd just be very consistent, so all the styles match. But just really just more of a pedestrian gate, so we would extend the wall across. Nothing too high, but just to give some sense of closure to the area. That's all it really is.
Okay.
But the materials will match. That'd be the goal.
And through the chair, it mentioned that you were talking with the engineering department or getting some reviews on stormwater management? Where is that in the process?
Oh, correct. Our engineers, Stonefield, did design this to some degree, but we will be fully compliant with the engineering department's requirements. So whatever's dictated, required, or necessary, we'll make sure we comply with that. There was a few other items too. There was mention about to be sure that the garbage truck or the trash truck can get around the corner. So the engineer mentioned they did shorten up the island where that transformer was located to make sure that turn works, the turning radius works. So they guaranteed us the turn will work. And there was also comments too about the tree cluster to be removed. He just noted that the regulated trees will be replaced where possible, and if necessary, a fee will be paid to the city's tree fund. So I'm not sure if that's the proper way to do that, but
Knowing how much work is going on this street right now and some of the other beautification efforts that property owners in the city are undertaking, whatever the resolution is, whether it's paying into the tree fund or replacing things on or very near the site, I would trust that well, Aaron probably is on this one. Aaron would be able to make sure that things stay in the neighborhood, if not on the site, very close.
I think from a
Is
total,
that a reasonable assumption? Okay.
yeah, there's a significant amount of trees we're planting. There's, I think, 6 in the right of way. There's 2 on the western side, and then 4 in the middle of the site too. So we're trying to green up the site.
Actually, if I could, through the chair, on the subject of trees, it says in the proposal that there are 8 proposed trees, but then in your site plan, you are showing 12, I believe, right? So just wondering why there's a discrepancy in the proposal, or in the description, I suppose.
I'm not sure. I'm just going off the sheer count that from our landscape plan, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's what we're proposing.
Okay.
If that's okay and adequate.
No,
That works.
it is. It's great. I'm just wondering why in our packet it says that there are only 8 trees being proposed and 133 shrubs. But okay.
Through the chair, I think it's actually just the required trees for greenbelt and parking are the ones that were counted, and the other ones were additional courtyard trees beyond. But I don't know if that's from the review process, maybe.
Okay.
And maybe we have to look at the definition of the Japanese hornbeam. Could that be considered a shrub or a tree?
It's a tree.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's a tree.
It's a tree.
Okay.
It's a tree.
I'll commit to it.
There you go. I'd like to move in the matter of Sidwell number 25-35-457-056 East Bennett Street. The Planning Commission approved the site plan based on plans dated received by the Planning Commission on February 7th, 2018, with the following findings and subjects as listed in the packet. In addition, I'd like to add the condition that the air conditioner units and meters are in the interior of the courtyard, not on the east side of the buildings or west side of the buildings.
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion on the table from Councilman Martin with a second from Commissioner Gurink. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, then we will have a roll call vote on this one.
Just 1 second. Azar,
Yes.
Brazen,
Yes.
Casio,
Yes.
Gurink,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Baker.
Yes, that motion passes.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much for all your work on this.
Thank you for your
It's
time.
been a pleasure. So if I could just do a real quick poll of the audience, because my sense is that there are more people here to talk about M1 than about residential zoning, but I don't want to assume that. How many people are here to talk about residential zoning district updates? Excellent. And I would make a suggestion. This is what I was going to suggest, but I got a little bit thrown off when Krista came in, so sorry, I probably should have done this up at approval of the agenda. But if the commission would entertain it, I would suggest that we do, never mind, Justin already moved it. Which way did we say we were going to flip it?
We were undecided.
We were undecided. Oh, let's leave it as is then. All right, I think we've flipped it so that we've got the first discussion is the one that's going to be the meatiest, and that the most number of people are here for, just so folks aren't waiting around. So, M1 Industrial Subdistrict, next steps discussion. Thank you to everyone here who hosted us and a couple of our colleagues from the City Council in your businesses and buildings. It was a wonderful tour. It was actually a really gorgeous day outside, which we were so lucky. So just a lot of appreciation, at least from me, but I heard it from my colleagues as well, for you guys for your hospitality. So thank you very much. I'll let Justin introduce this.
Great. Thank you. So I'll just give a brief update. A lot of this information is already in the packet, but I assume probably not everyone has seen that packet. So we'll just kind of give an update of where we've been, what we know, and where we could potentially move forward on. So we've been talking quite a bit over the past year and a half or so since we were working on the master plan about, obviously there's a lot of change happening in this district, but also in just the industrial, quote-unquote industrial sector across the country. So trying to evaluate the assets we have, existing businesses, infrastructure, and where the future of this district and industrial could be. So specifically focusing on, we've talked about a number of areas, and the area of study can expand or contract depending on where this group takes it. But generally we've been talking about the area surrounded by the railroad tracks, Woodward Heights, Hilton, and Camborne. And the zoning district is zoned as M1 limited industrial. We've been really talking a lot about production uses and what makes sense from a retail perspective right now. The ordinance doesn't really have a cap on, it just has a minimum of 20% retail with production uses. There's not a maximum. So we've been talking a lot about what is the right formula for that. We've talked about, is it a blanket ordinance update that covers all of M1, which also does stretch into some other areas of the city, versus creating potentially an overlay district, and I can get into more conversation about that. Obviously, the master plan has been a big part of this conversation, and the tour that Chair Baker just mentioned. Just some brief information on the data points we were able to pull together. So, on average in the district, we're looking at an average building size of roughly 14,000 square feet. The median of the buildings that are there is about 9,900 square feet. And then lot sizes on average 0.62 acres, and then the mid-range of that is 0.42 acres. In our quick inventory of the types of uses that are there, it's primarily manufacturing and packaging type processing type businesses if you're going by the definitions in the ordinance. A lot of building trades are also in the district with 23 businesses there. And then it's kind of scattered after that between, automotive repair, some medical uses, dog boarding, but 4 production businesses with accessory retail. So not a ton, but something that we've been, monitoring. We looked a lot at parking. If we're looking at changes to a district to allow more of the general public in and, potentially draw people to this district, as much as I hate to think about parking is an issue still, it certainly is in Ferndale. So roughly 775 off-street parking spaces are constructed in the district to date. Not all of them are conforming. A lot of those are parking in the front yard, which isn't permitted now, but obviously a lot of these parcels have been constructed long ago. We did count around 335 on-street parking spaces in the district. Those vary as far as times that they're allowed, and the streets kind of vary. If the pink on this map here is kind of showing where there are sidewalks in the district, so you can see there's some sizable gaps. So even if someone were to park in the district, having them walk to other areas to visit other businesses could, cause people to walk in the street. Might be a little dicey with some semi trucks and things like that around. So something that the city and as properties get developed, we would look to improve. Back to parking, really 1,200 Woodward Heights has the most in the district, and that kind of aligns with the size of the building that is there. Most of the properties that do have the most parking are on that outer edge, so it could make sense to, if we were going to do an overlay district and infrastructure was a consideration, those outer parcels might be something we think about. And also there's a lot of signage in the district that I'm sure no one is really enforcing for no parking zones and 2-hour parking and things like that. So that's something we can still explore and see if that's actually being enforced. I mentioned the gaps in the sidewalk in the district. Not a lot of bike parking, but we're starting to see more with some of the new projects that are coming about. The area is a kind of an important connector to other, not just within Ferndale. Burdett is a good north-south connector to Harding Park, and East Camborne connects to the regional bike network. There's a school nearby, but also you can connect to Royal Oak quite easily from this district, Pleasant Ridge, Hazel Park as well. The city did make some improvements through a grant in 2016 to add bike lanes to the district, add a bike repair station, a map, but more to come potentially in 2019 as we look to resurface then through a federally funded project. As I mentioned, the master plan really did focus on this district. There's a whole separate market study on the district, so I didn't include a lot of that data in here, but if anybody hasn't seen that, contact me and I can definitely point you in the right direction. But there were really 5 recommendations that came out of the master plan for this district, promoting a property and business owner organization, which has kind of happened organically, which I'm sure people might speak on later, and then considering the retail as we are right now. And then there was a lot of conversation about residential, and at the time there still is, I think, a lot of demand throughout the city, but we did do a specific study on this district that could allow for residential lofts, upper-level lofts on some properties. I think collectively we've kind of said that actually needs more study, and considering the number of residential developments going on near this district and downtown and throughout the city, it might make sense to wait on that, especially if there's not the infrastructure within the district to support it.
Speaking of infrastructure, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's not a master plan action item, but can we capture somewhere in this document? On that tour, I heard a lot about the city services. We're kind of failing in that area. We don't plow the streets in there. We don't, so I want to make sure it doesn't require action of this body, but I want to make sure we address that. Because anything we do, and if we fall down as a city providing those services, it's just going to fail. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
No problem. Obviously, I won't go through this is just captured straight from the master plan. So this sort of polygon here, that overlay district that we put over top of the area, you can see that the majority of it is future land use for industrial. There is some of the outer properties along Hilton that could be mixed use in the future. I think even on our walk we saw some of those buildings probably would not make sense right away for mixed use. So maybe if we do consider an overlay, that does give people the option of proposing uses and redesigns for either of those zoning districts. So the latest direction for the Planning Commission was let's think about putting together a steering committee, and that seemed to be pretty well received on the tour. And I think it's good to get that feedback from everyone in the district. So there's already been, I would say, 4 or 5 interested parties in joining the steering committee. I think 9 would probably be a decent number. I could be persuaded into 11 if there's that much of a demand for it. And having 2 planning commissioners, Commissioner Brazian had mentioned she'd be interested as 1 planning commissioner, and then 1 city council member.
Pick me.
Great. Great. So this committee's filling up fast, which is great.
Must be present to win.
Yep. And so I just put some general goals in here that I'm open to the group's feedback on, but it seems like probably within 2 to 3 meetings we could probably iron out a recommendation that could come back to the Planning Commission on whatever that potential ordinance amendment or zoning map amendment could be. Based on just a rough schedule that I'll outline on another slide, is by late April or early May, I think it's probably reasonable to have an ordinance update and eventually to council after that. This is just the rough next step deadlines that I proposed for now. And obviously, in between all those steering committee meetings, we can provide updates to the rest of the Planning Commission to see where it's going, and maybe get some pulse checks from this commission. But I think which I think it's great to see so many people from the district here. Shows that they would really like to participate and help shape the future of this district. So that was really all I had, but wanted to at least start the conversation. And
Can you go back to your steering committee membership?
sure.
Sorry. No, not that one. I know, right?
So we did
Through
send.
the chair, I'm thinking what's missing here, though, is, like, the businesses need to be represented, but there's a significant neighborhood surrounding this, and we saw that in the tour. And I don't see them represented here.
I
So,
thought they were in your notes originally.
So we did send a mailing out to not just the businesses, but also within the adjacent neighborhood as well. I haven't had anybody reach out to me specifically yet. Hopefully there might be someone here from that neighborhood that might want to participate. And
there's one on planning commission.
yes, exactly. So Commissioner Brazen had mentioned her interest in maybe as a dual role.
Sure.
So
Or if not, council or perhaps someone living in the neighborhood on the planning commission
Yeah.
can come up with a couple of candidates too. But I think resident input,
definitely.
because that neighborhood has a unique characteristic. I certainly heard that on the tour. So I want to make sure they're represented.
yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I'm done.
So I would say if we don't have a resident who's here tonight who wants to participate, we can certainly reach back out again.
So I will ask, just to make sure that people are involved, so Justin just mentioned that updates will be sent out and everything. So if you haven't shared your name and your email address with Justin, please do it tonight. There's a sign-in sheet in the back. I want to make sure that everyone sort of, there's, I imagine, an evolving M1 overlay district email list that's happening. So is that the way you'd want to capture emails?
Yeah, absolutely.
Be on the sign-in sheet, and just know that you want to be kept in the loop about this. So that's request number one, is sign-in sheet, just so that we can keep everyone up to date. And then I guess request number two is definitely want to start gathering really goals and direction, or if there's anything that people want to share about the district currently that they like or don't like, certainly please feel free. But I think in terms of goals and direction, if we're going to narrow down to a little bit smaller body, it's probably good to hear from the audience and then hear from the Planning Commission about what some of our goals are, both for the district and for the process. You know, what we'd like to see come out of it. I think maybe if we start with that conversation, we can see where there's overlap and where there are things that we'll need to work through as a steering committee, and then we'll get that steering committee appointed. Also, definitely on the sign-in sheet, if you're interested in being on the steering committee, please note that. So we'll do this as in sort of, I guess, a public hearing type forum, but it doesn't need to be that formal at all. But I want to make sure that people's names and comments are captured for the record, which means that, do we have mics to pass around, or do we want people to stand up? I was thinking it might be. People are welcome to come up and stand at the podium and state your name and address for the record, and then 3 to 5 minutes for comments. Or I think we've got a couple of handhelds that we can just pass around too, so that not everyone needs to kind of schlep up and down. But please, we've got someone jumping out of her seat, so come on up. In general, thinking about goals and direction for the neighborhood, and for this steering committee conversation. But please, any comments that you've got? Welcome.
Hi, my name is Kathy Cook, and I'm the president and CEO of K-Tech Systems, and I guess you were in my building.
We were at your
and I missed
business.
you. I'm sorry I missed you.
Thank you.
But first of all, I
Thank you for
wanted to say
hosting us.
I am grateful to be back to Ferndale. I live in Pleasant Ridge. I started my company in Ferndale and moved to Farmington Hills and am back to Ferndale, so I'm really happy to be here. I have, since I moved back, employed 9 new people. I'm bringing them from all over. I'm bringing them to live here, so I really am concerned about the neighborhoods. My workers are anywhere from labor workers to engineers. I have also a lot of expat. I have people from Australia, from France. I think you met some of them, Jordan. So we are an automotive industrial testing equipment manufacturer. We build the new, you hear about electrification vehicles and autonomous vehicles. We're that cutting edge, bringing all the test equipment here. There's a lot of new business coming into the area, and we want to attract that talent. We really care about our neighborhood. We are so excited when we show the building that we're in the building with Urban Rest, and we have this cool brewery. They bring new business. We partner with the food people, I mean the butcher next door. It's just the coolest neighborhood ever. People really want to work in our building. And it's old and really unique looking, but when they walk down the hall and we can get work done by the machine shop that's down the street, down the hall from me, and that just gets me business right there because people realize that we're contained and we can have so much capability in our area. So no, I'm grateful for this and this exciting adventure, and be happy to be on the committee. Like I said, I live in Pleasant Ridge. I bike along those trails that you're talking about. I'm a big bicycle person, so that's all important to me as well. So thank you very much for what you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Can we ask you a quick, or can
Yes,
I ask you
sure,
a quick question?
absolutely.
So you've got 19 staff now, and what I think I inferred from what you said is that you've got kind of multiple pay levels.
Exactly.
So people who are looking to live in the neighborhood, maybe some people who live a little further away and commute in.
Yes.
Just a question as they're navigating the neighborhood when it comes to parking or getting around during the day or being able to kind of, pop out for a walk at lunchtime. Is there anything that you're hearing that they would love to see more of or less of?
More restaurants,
okay.
more close shopping. Everybody's from, like I said, different parts of the world, and they're used to walkable neighborhoods and things to do around the area. And the more convenient I make them, because sometimes some of them work long hours that they can, spend walking around the neighborhood. They really enjoy it, and they do use that. I mean, they just get up and generally walk. Like I said, I like having the mix of the businesses there because we partner with a lot of those businesses. The paint shops, all that, they do our work for us. So, it makes it very cool for us.
Thank you. I've been thinking a lot about how to, opportunities to try to integrate some of those Hilton storefronts that have been vacant for a long time because they don't have a lot of parking. But now if we've got a lot more people slightly to the south, can they be walkable? So I was just curious.
Hair
if you've got 19
salons, any
people.
of those things. Anything you can make it so convenient. When you're at work all day, you can run and do your errands or do something during the day. It would be awesome.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thanks. That's really helpful. All right. I don't know if people have handheld mics or if anyone wants to come up to the podium. Either way. Either way, or come on up. I know some people don't like to stand to talk, which is totally fine. If it had been a slightly smaller group, we could have all kind of sat together. But I want to make sure
my name is David Silberman. I live on Inman Street, so I'm virtually at the corner of Woodward Heights and Inman. So I think I have a relatively unique perspective of this district.
Welcome.
I've been in Ferndale. I bought about 6 years ago in March. I've been thrilled to see the general direction of Ferndale. It's where my friends always want to come to, and where we like to, go out, walk around, go to the restaurants, everything. My neighbor is Zach, the owner of Urban Rest. So I've been excited to see this district really develop. So I'd love to throw my name into consideration for the steering committee.
Great. Your neighbor's got a great commute. Wow.
Yes. Live on 696 some days, going out to Novi. But yeah, I want to thank the commission for being so open with the residents of that district to let us know. I've never jumped into local politics all that much, but no time like the present.
Excellent.
Sorry.
Any thoughts? So you're right. You're on a really busy corner, and you're actually not far from Commissioner Brazen, who's lived in the neighborhood for a long time too. Any thoughts on? Are you seeing more people walking around, or
Yes, I'm very excited to see the new coffee shop going in. I'm going to be able to see it outside my kitchen window. That's going to be great. Urban Rest, I've seen engage the neighborhood doing events beyond just hosting people at the bar. They've done, group bike rides, things like that. And I think this district, as part of the master plan that I've taken a look at every once in a while, I think this district has a lot of potential. I would like to see some kind of, mixed use of some light industrial with some storefronts and, maybe some more walkability. I think potential is is through the roof, and I think that as a resident, I think that has a huge impact on our home values.
Can I ask you one more question?
Of course.
Sorry, I'm totally dominating the table, but just one more question. So if, because parking can be, this neighborhood wasn't designed for retail with big parking lots and that sort of thing. So if some of the parking from a neighboring business or a special event, or, let's say it's like Harvest Days at the butcher shop or something, and like everyone's coming. And if some of that parking starts to spill over onto your street, thoughts about, is it already pretty busy parking on Inman Street? Is there room?
We had a minor hit and run there last night.
Oh.
That's a separate
Oh my gosh.
thing. I haven't seen too many issues on my street. I have a garage that backs on to Paxton Street, and I've got a one-car spot in front. But the neighboring building, the Saxon building, I've seen people just kind of use that lot from here, from time to time. Urban Rest has I think the right size lot for them. Yep. I'm not too familiar with the general parking in that district though, so I can't answer that.
But it doesn't feel like, does it feel like your street is already sort of super full with residents who park there, or is there maybe some flexibility?
I have some neighbors that I think take some liberties on where they park.
It's public street.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're ready for local politics. You got that,
Got it. Just kind of curious, because I live close to downtown Ferndale, so we get festival parking sometimes, but
Sure.
in general, we're in a great spot where we don't have a lot of parking overlap. But for people who are closer in, it has become a real challenge. So I just kind of wondered, what it feels like already there.
I haven't seen too much congestion for whatever my perspective is worth.
That's helpful. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Okay. Who's got the mic? Mike, who's got the mic? Come on up. Welcome, the man with the shortest commute in town.
It's not bad. Zach Topinski, founder, owner of Urban Rest Brewing Company. I'm also a resident. I live on Inman, next to David. Would also like to express my gratitude to the community and the city for accepting us as they have. We've had a great deal of success. Since we've opened up 6-7 months ago, it's been a bit of a whirlwind. We've had a couple of expansions, and we have a few more expansions scheduled for 2018. So a lot of growth at Urban Rest and all around us, too. One of the concerns we do have for the future would be parking. We've had some instances lately where we've been completely full in a lot. I haven't had any specific circumstances where I've ran across any upset neighbors, but I do know that there's some overflow parking going on into the neighborhood there. Not so much as far as Inman, but it's more, I think that's Burdette there.
Burdette.
That there have been maybe some issues in the summer, also parking along Wolcott. I know that there's no parking currently that's allowed there, but a lot of people park in those spots. I'm not sure if it's just not wide enough, to have any parking spots or anything like that, but parking is a concern for us for the future, I think. Don't want to affect, the neighborhood as much as possible. And don't anticipate we'll always be, at capacity and always be filling the parking lot, but, it's an issue.
Yeah.
One of the other things, our current license doesn't allow us, our current zoning doesn't allow us to have food. So we hold a full food service license with the local health department. Went through all the requirements on that, but we do have some limitations on what we can do. Specifically, we'd like to put in a wood-fired oven. We'd like to do wood-fired pizzas. As it stands, we're not allowed to do that, so I would like some consideration for that. We do want to stay in the community long-term, and we have pop-ups and things like that now, but it doesn't seem it's very successful right now. It's been great, but for the long term, we want to secure our own kind of food future, so to speak.
Yeah. Jackie? Oh, is this an editorial comment? Sorry.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, all the pop-ups we do
didn't need
are
the
all,
link for
all
that.
on our Facebook page, as well as our website. We do them Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We've been doing yoga every Saturday morning. That has drawn 30 or 40 people a weekend. It's been really, really great. Try to engage as much as we can, but always mixing it up. So that's the best spot to check for the
We're doing
events.
the morning of our tour. Yeah. We saw the yoga mats the morning of our tour, and I went, wait, where are they all going? And they said, they're going to the brewery.
Yeah, it's nice. A little beer yoga.
Good way to start your weekend. In terms of sort of bigger vision for the district, we talked about parking. There's going to be some challenges. We know with sidewalk. I mean, part of it's just the nature and character of the neighborhood and the district, and part of that makes it cool, and part of it could make it, a little bit dangerous if it gets overcrowded. So, in terms of your position on Woodward Heights, sidewalks in front seem like a really natural connector.
Yeah, we would love sidewalks. We don't. We're one of the businesses that doesn't have sidewalks on the north side as well as on the east side.
Okay.
We do get a lot of walk-up traffic, a lot of bike traffic, so consideration for more, bike racks and things like that. We do have about a 30 spot bike rack that's going to go in the spring.
Cool.
We've been working with Justin on, so walkability, bikeability, those are all really great things for us.
Do you see a lot of people walking and biking now, either in the neighborhood or to your business?
In the winter now, or?
Well, not like today.
I wasn't sure.
3 inches of snow, no. But
absolutely,
in the last few months
we've
you've
had
been
30, 40 bikes chained up,
Okay.
all around at any given time. The walk-up traffic is incredible. I mean, we have 50% of our business on a day-to-day basis is a repeat, local customer. So we're heavily, community supported.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you. We may have more questions later, now that we know who's who. Other questions and comments from the audience?
Gentleman over this way, had his hand up.
Oh, there was. Welcome.
Good evening. You guys have heard from me a couple times now. Just wanted to kind of express my gratitude towards you all for coming on the tour and then the great support we have tonight. I think I've expressed before, but my
Will
business...
you state your name for the record?
Sorry. Brad DeVries from 5/8 Architecture.
Thank you.
My business partner Grant and I think we both have a pretty unique perspective on this, as we're both Ferndale residents. Our office is within the district, and currently in development we have 4 projects in the district, some of which are directly addressing this retail component, as well as a few others that do not. So we have a vested interest in the city as a whole, as well as the district itself. And I think to some of the points that other people are saying, we definitely are happy with the growth. Projects like Urban Rest and Farmfield Table have added a lot of life to it, but it's a very small portion of this. And the manufacturing and the building trades are definitely a really important part of it too. As a design-build architecture firm, people like Joe Sullivan at Paradigm Plumbing is someone we work directly with. He's in our neighborhood. And we actually found that relationship just by driving by and seeing who's in our neighborhood. So it's a tight-knit community that's helping grow this community, and we're excited for where it's going. And I've expressed to Justin already, but definitely interested in joining this steering committee to help develop this area.
Thanks, Brad. Yeah, we were excited when Paradigm expanded, so glad it's going well. Other questions, comments from the audience? Visions, goals, things that drive you crazy, any of it?
Hi, I'm Jackie Smith. I'm one of the owners of Coventry Creations on Walcott, just down the street. We're what makes the M1 area smell really good. I'm not lying. I also am a resident of Ferndale. An interesting journey that I've been on is I've been looking into buying and renovating the building that I'm in at 2355. And one of my concerns, being right down the street from where Polar used to be, is that I'm immediately at, stage 2 of doing perk test for my building. And so I'm just wondering, have you considered or talked about, because we've got a lot of industrial buildings, there were machine shops, we have Polar down the street, who knows what happened. I mean, my drain stank every month.
Oh, yeah.
It was a bad scene for that. And then what even in that piece of land, if that's needs to be mitigated on that, and if it's going to seep out. The other thing is going down Pleasant Street. There is a Pleasant Street in Ferndale. It's about this big, and it goes right to the train tracks. And so if we're going to do more stuff that's maybe adding some residential or retail, that there's no barriers, there's nothing to protect anything. I know because I walked on the train tracks one day.
We noticed that when we were at your
Yeah.
spot. We were like, oh, you can
And there
just
they are.
walk to the train track.
Right to the train track. So a little bit of that. Those two concerns, as I didn't know they would need to be a concern until I started doing my research. I love our little area.
Yeah.
When I moved in, and I can't believe it's like 14 years ago when I moved into that building, it was like a little neighborhood. Now, a lot of the businesses have changed since then, but I'm looking forward to meeting my neighbors some more, and we could have a block party. It'd be cool.
We could.
But I like what's going on here. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Environmental concerns were on my list too, and actually Justin and I talked a little bit about them in terms of, if the city's doing any types of infrastructure improvements, whether we're updating drainage or sidewalks or anything that's kind of moving soil around. There's a lot to think about.
There's not a lot of city sewers around my area that I know of. So when it's raining, we just watch the water come right up to, and the curbs are pretty low too, so it comes right up if it's a real big rain. Although, in 14, my building didn't flood, but my house did.
Oh God, I remember that.
Yeah. But I was so concerned trying to get to my building that I completely missed going home. But we need a little more of that too.
Remember that picture of your basement?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Drainage was definitely something we hadn't thought about yet.
Forgive my ignorance on the topic, but tangential to that, what about Polar? I mean, what more needs to be done there?
Let's do you want to put a pin in that, and that can be a commission question, because I've got
Sure,
the same,
you're right. I'm
same
sorry.
questions. Nope, I'm just going to make a note. Justin and I already started the conversation. So.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, comments, things for us to consider, goals for the neighborhood, concerns? Come on, please. Floor is open. Sorry it's so formal, but
Hi, I'm Stacy. I'm with Vincetta Gardens. I'm on Grayson.
welcome.
Thanks. You talk about residential. Why are we? A couple years ago, they were talking big about residential neighborhood, and now you're backing up. I'm just wondering why.
Residential in the M1
In that
district?
M1,
or,
yeah.
I think
Great place for lofts. Great place for gives more customers to these guys.
important
and
topic
those
for
kinds.
discussion.
So it'd be something to discuss.
Yeah, and I think the difference between some new residential that's been proposed as opposed to reuse of buildings and
Right,
some
reuse
different
buildings.
things. Yep.
Also, another comment: sidewalks. I'm all landscaped right to the road, so I would be not happy.
Some places are just not going to fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's nothing on my street anyway, so I'm really it.
You're on Grayson?
So, yeah, everybody else is fronting some other road anyways.
You got the big rocks?
I have big rocks.
You've got the big rocks. So you're by Jackie. I know where you are. Okay. Thank you. Great questions.
I'm Matt Osecki. I'm an investor in the area.
Welcome.
Thank you, and I think this is a great idea. I'm a commercial real estate broker as well and bring a lot of tenants to the area, buyers to the area. And I think that you need to consider this as a whole district. I hear a lot of parking concerns and other concerns, but to drive development and growth, if you start putting handcuffs and restrictions on how many parking spaces one building needs versus one use versus another, rather than looking at the district as a whole, seeing how many parking spaces are available for one space versus another, you're really going to start to hinder growth. You're going to eliminate people coming there. If you look at other districts around the area, Cole Street in Birmingham, Delamere and Royal Oak, you've got some businesses that are doing very well in those areas, and you need to look at how they've grown those areas and make sure that you make some of the same great ideas they did, but also eliminate some of the mistakes they did. You know, Cole Street has a horrendous parking problem, but at the same time, their businesses are flourishing. So sometimes a parking problem is only to certain people, and you want to address those people and make sure they're okay, but you don't want to eliminate growth by handcuffing some of the businesses that are looking in that area, whether it's industrial or it's a restaurant, you know, or it's residential. I think you need to look at each project separately within the whole district and not the project within its property lines.
Thank you. Yeah, please, Kathy. Yeah, come on. Yep, come on back up. Just this way we get it on the record. Perfect. Yeah.
Since I'm in the automotive world and attend a lot of these automotive events for the future, one of the things is mobility. And parking lots, to me, are going to be fewer because we are encouraging people to, you know, especially if they're coming to a bar, they're going to be doing Uber. And young people don't want to drive as much. And they're going to be share rides and autonomous vehicles. And so parking garages really should be looked at a whole differently and be partnering with the automotive industry to learn about that because, I mean, yes, they may be a revenue generating, but maybe there's other ways to do things, and I think that there's valuable land, and to his point, you know, you want to really look for the future and what the new thing is going to be, and I think it's going to be less parking lots, less spaces. So I just want you to think
Commission
about that.
very much agrees with you on that one. Yeah, thank you. Any other comments at the moment? We can always come back around. Okay. So, commissioners, thinking about our tour and any comments you want to share from that. If there's anyone else who wants to volunteer for the steering committee, of course, but also goals and direction for the district. Obviously, we just went through master planning, and so a lot of our goals are articulated there. But goals and direction also for this process in terms of what you'd like to see come out the other end. Does anyone want to volunteer, or I'll put someone on the spot?
Well, I've already raised an issue. Sorry, Steph. I mean, I'm fine with the goals and stuff that we put in the master plan. I am curious about Polar, though, so I'll go back to that.
Yeah, and maybe environmental
in general, specifically.
Broadly.
Yeah, I can't provide a ton of information right now, but I think we can look into more. I know that in 2013, Polar did close. They had to submit a closure plan with the building department. I don't know. I think it was a pretty lengthy document. I don't know all the details from it, but that's something that we can have as homework. There was also years ago, much before my time, ASTI Environmental did a just study of all the sites there and what are the environmental concerns going forward and which ones would be worthy of brownfields and things like that. So we can do a whole summary on that.
It would be great. It would also be to know, did Polar close bankrupt, doesn't exist as an entity anymore, or was not bought up by anyone? So if there is mitigation that needs to be done, who's holding that bag?
Sure.
You know, and to find out where they are or whoever owns the liabilities from that corporation, because it is still significant to this day. I hear about it all the time. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did that survey that was done, you said there was a survey done of a lot of parcels or all the parcels. Did that include vacant parcels? So I'm thinking about behind Jackie's building, for example, as you approach the train tracks, there's a whole other set of concerns as you approach train tracks and train right-of-ways.
Yeah, I believe it did. I think it mostly focused on the properties adjacent to the railroad tracks. I'm not sure if it's spilled out further, but yeah, I mean, so the old Reichhold chemical sites. And
that was one of my questions and concerns with Justin as we were thinking about, kind of like, was it Matt was saying, focusing on a concentration of amenities or amenities for a full district. And I'm thinking, well, are there little dead-end streets or spaces that, is there either any city-owned property that I'm not aware of that we can use for some type of shared amenity, or city-owned right-of-way that can be turned into some type of shared amenity, but then also thinking about what some of the remediation needs and investments might be. It might be a lot more than just, a new surface for a parking lot. like Pleasant Ridge did up by Cork, there's a whole other set of information that we may need. And it sounds like we've got a really good start that the steering committee can dig into some of those details. Anything else, Councilman?
No, thank you.
At the moment? Okay. Anyone else want to jump in? Otherwise, I'll keep talking about parking. So public parking was one of my questions. And the map that you had up, Justin, that sort of showed where parking is currently permitted and where it's not. And I know some of these right-of-ways are much wider than others. I completely agree with the how do we create shared amenities as opposed to the site has 2 of these and the site has 2 of these and the site shares 10 of these. And because my fear with this district is that we're going to get deeper and deeper into shared parking agreements, and that as things change and grow, let's say that the red building with the 120 spaces now needs 120 spaces. Now we've just really, pinched everyone who's further south. So that's one of my big questions for the steering committee is where are there opportunities, and for the city, where are there opportunities to create some of these shared spaces where someone can safely park and walk a block or two to a building, knowing that there may not be a sidewalk because they may not fit everywhere. There may not be parking right at or in front of your building, but if it is a relatively smaller accessory use, we're not talking Rosie O'Grady's, we're talking tasting room related to a manufacturing use. That's parking is one of my concerns, but I think that keeping that accessory use feel is my broadest goal, is that this is still a primarily manufacturing neighborhood. This is, and we saw from a lot of the businesses, this is where a lot of things are incubating right now, and so they're not yet quite sure how big they're going to be, and then 3 months might need a lot more space, or need that flexibility to move around. And that was fascinating to learn just how quickly some of these business styles are changing. So to maintain that level of flexibility for those manufacturing uses and those incubating business type uses, I guess is one of my primary concerns. I would not want to see a giant restaurant in this neighborhood, but a conversation about how a brewery's tasting room evolves is an interesting one.
Right.
As long as it's still sort of accessory to the bigger primary. That's one of my bigger goals, is that this is still primarily a manufacturing.
Right. And for those that weren't at the last meeting, that was kind of the big discussion, is if there were,
how do we manage that?
Accessory food uses, it should be so that a producer can have that as an accessory rather than McDonald's coming in and doing a adaptive reuse of a factory or whatever.
Probably prefer not that.
Yes.
Just again, based on traffic, character of the neighborhood,
right.
The ability of the public infrastructure there to sustain a whole ton more traffic. That's my biggest concern, is pedestrian, car, any type of traffic.
Right. And
we know we've got the water. We know we've got the underground infrastructure, but the infrastructure on top is.
And I guess I'm less worried for the businesses that are within walking distance of Hilton, because there is the on-street parking there. But Woodward Heights, there's just not the width there. And if you were to try and fit that width in, you would be probably getting rid of bike lanes, or you would be having very small sidewalks and not really having room for tree canopy. So I don't think we want to go that route. But unfortunately, the city doesn't have any property in the district. But maybe it's still something we could try and pursue and connect people for shared parking areas that offset daytime and nighttime use. But
I think one of the special things about this neighborhood, also in terms of it being, it's still sort of a manufacturing or industrial, not heavy industrial so much, but the lighter industrial, is the natural collaborations that grow out of that, whether you're in the same building or in adjacent spaces. So I guess I would want to find a way to preserve and enhance that character in terms of a goal for this neighborhood. This is a place where people work together, and they may do different types of work, but they find ways to enhance their products and other things by being in proximity to each other. Other thoughts about the district, about our tour, about goals? Oh, sure.
Talk about that line, like a big restaurant here from McDonald's.
the comment was that to try to find complementary uses at different times of day, ways that if you've got daytime businesses that aren't overlapping with evening businesses, it doesn't so much matter what the use is. Is that kind of like whether it's a restaurant or something else, some of these shared parking arrangements might help if there are different times of day? Yep. We noted that. You guys had the parking in back and then the retailer on front. Yep. Commissioner Casio.
Yeah, just, I guess, setting some expectations for the committee. My thoughts are this committee would start to identify some pedestrian corridors where there's room in this district for retail, so retail corridors, bike lanes, as we said, maybe street lighting, sidewalks, obviously, through wherever they're needed. So perhaps, a connector route like Burdette. And what areas really can support retail or should while preserving that manufacturing industrial character as well. So does it make sense to essentially rezone this whole district, or does it make sense, not rezone, but allow retail throughout this entire district, or is it make sense only along certain corridors like Woodward Heights and Hilton and perhaps Burdette or not, and Camborne and things like that. So just based on our tour, it seemed like there are areas that definitely could support that and areas that couldn't, and I think we just need to dive deeper into that and start to identify those things.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think
literally
the
Yeah.
shared parking, like
Where's it
you
gonna work?
brought up earlier, makes a lot of sense in that district as well. So could we identify areas that could essentially support a shared parking area that might be able to support most of the district or a large area of that district? So.
Do you want to be on a committee?
Possibly.
We have 3 commissioners who all have relatively new children at home, so I won't poke you guys too
Yeah.
much, I promise. And one of them's not here tonight because he's got a brand new baby at home. So. We without children. Look at the rest.
My kids are older, but I'm afraid of the time commitment because I've got a lot of commitments, so I'd hate to dabble in it and not really be able to commit the time, but definitely interested.
Very fair.
I'll be texting Deb.
I don't know if I double dip as council and commissioner. Probably.
Well, or maybe Deb's got a neighbor hat too, right? So I think that there are
Sure.
a lot of overlapping roles. People wear a lot of different hats in this community. We've got business owners who are also neighbors who are also building things for other business owners. So it all kind of comes together.
Through the chair, I've lived in this neighborhood for 15 years. It's got a different character, I think, than some of the other parts of Ferndale. I really like it. It's very quiet. I don't know many of my neighbors, and I'm looking to this as an opportunity to get to know you. I think I literally live in your backyard. So it's important to me, though, that we do take this as an opportunity to sort of canvass the neighborhood, let this district know that there's change coming, because it is kind of a quiet, nestled away, certain kinds of traffic but low traffic area, and preparing people for change would be high on my list.
Any other comments, questions, thoughts from the table or the audience?
Yeah, I'd like to agree with a lot of what was said, but that inclusive nature of this moving forward, I know we have a lot of representation of new businesses, people who are looking at things that are coming into the area, making sure we're reaching those people that we're still kind of missing out on. And some of these outreach efforts, I think there's some representation that isn't there, and making sure that we have that from the community. I really like the idea of looking at a couple preferred pedestrian routes through there, so we can really prioritize those locations. And yeah, obviously the parking is one. So I don't know if it's the shared parking, municipal parking options, or even kind of looking at the efficiency of the spaces we already have. don't know about Urban Rest if you can have the geometry for angled parking, but are we using those areas we have committed to parking most efficiently? So that might be an alternative look at the parking solutions too.
Interesting. For on-street questions too. Interesting. Please join us. Come on up. Current parking configurations I hadn't thought of.
I'm Craig Singer, one of the partners in many of the buildings that you guys walk through, and
Thank you very much for opening up the
helpful
buildings.
in helping us acquire several of the buildings. I think my position would be just maintaining sort of the kind of flexibility in whatever is ultimately passed that will allow this district to sort of grow organically as it's been doing. And, it's made some very major improvements without us doing much. And we have a lot of ideas and improvements that we can make to create parking and to create synergies between our buildings. We've sort of strategically acquired some properties that will allow us to create convenient parking for other buildings, and it just hasn't been done yet. So, I would sort of maintain that I'm not sure where the corridors are going to be or should be or will be in the future. It might be that somebody tears down a few buildings on a street that I haven't thought of and create great parking for another building that somebody bought, that same person bought, where a restaurant, a great restaurant in the middle of this district might be wonderful at some point. I just would hope that whatever is passed can be done in a way that will sort of allow the kinds of flexibilities of uses and that create like a really cool district where people are blown away when they see like an artist space next to a maker space, next to Urban Rest, next to it, that's what is like, oh my God, this place is cool. I want to be here too. And I know that it's not easy to create like zoning that allows it. Right, and I know that that's going to be difficult, but you're sort of in a unique position that this area is taking off, and I just hope that everybody can create, us too, create the kind of flexibility that will allow it to flourish like it can, like it already is. And that's my comment.
I've got a question.
I'm happy to be on the steering committee as well.
I've got a question for you.
Sure.
Thinking about some of the pictures I've seen in the newspaper about the Iron Ridge project and the opportunity for green space there, because it's such a huge space. Thinking about the slightly more southern M1 district, have you, in your dreams, as you're thinking about where things might go or how buildings might change or be reconfigured, any green space thoughts or visions? Or like when I look at these little dead end streets that we've got, I'm like, oh, I can't put a park next to the railroad tracks. Like what could we do, or is it even needed?
No, I think that Brooke and Kelly might speak to it, but yeah, we've engaged people to be evaluating on our behalf pedestrian routes, bike routes. Some things would be integrated with the railroad track, which I get it. It's not typical, it's not traditional, but some things can be really cool.
Sure. Yep.
Barring an accident, which isn't cool, right? But I think that we have a lot of grand ideas and a lot of interesting concepts that we're working out. Our whole project is in its infancy, at least this area. I think that Iron Ridge we're a little further along with our plans. But
and that's such a unique space that has so much open space already.
Right.
Different. Yeah.
So I think that there's going to be a lot of dynamic projects in this area, both by us and by other people, and you know, we'll try and accommodate, and we'll try and stay out of the way when other people want to do things that, you know, are interesting and creative, and I think there'll be a lot of it. We haven't even gotten into, you know, the whole art community is really, like, this is the kind of space, you know, people are focused on the city of Detroit, but this could be great artist lofts, and that's another sort of interesting use that makes an area cool and culturally interesting, and we'd like to introduce that as well.
I think that's a great question.
But zoning is complicated, and we get it, and we're trying to work our way through complying with zoning ordinances, and, you know, these buildings don't even, it's not simple, like building and use restrictions, because most of these buildings were built as single-tenant buildings, and we're trying to make them multi-tenant buildings. It's all complicated, but I would just say it all requires flexibility.
You haven't bought any easy buildings, and you're kind of at the vanguard. But the, you know, thinking about this neighborhood and drainage and remediation and all of the complexities of this neighborhood is where my open space question came from. So might be something for the committee to think about, in addition to what the right residential mix is. You know, live work is very different than a big residential development.
We've been surprised that from an environmental standpoint, the buildings...
Been pleasantly surprised?
Yeah. The buildings that we've looked at have not had the kinds of issues that I might have expected. We ran into one that was, you know, that requires a lot of remediation. And then there's obviously little remediation everywhere. But for a district that's as old and has had as heavy a use as this area, I've been sort of pleasantly surprised.
Do you want to buy Polar next? No.
What's that? You know, by the way, I'm not familiar with it. So when you guys were talking about it, Brooke already showed me on her iPhone where it is. So, but I don't know anything about it. But yes.
Ask Justin for the reports we've already got. Start there before you pay for anything.
Yeah, right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I could, Craig.
Oh, Craig, I think Commissioner Azar is going to
Could I pick your brain about something?
Sure.
I'm wondering about maybe gateways or the face of the district, and what does Hilton mean to it? So we've got Woodward Heights, which is definitely facing residential, and Hilton, which is a commercial district, but we haven't really, how do you know you've arrived, or how do you identify the district, or should there be a gateway, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, I'm not sure. It's interesting. Woodward Heights is sort of like hidden. I mean, we all know that it exists, but to the outside world, it doesn't exist. I think that might be part of the coolness.
So you discover it, or you know about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's sort of an interesting thing. You wander, you all of a sudden, I send my friends to Urban Rest. By the way, you didn't mention scooters, but there's that we take scooters there as well. And it's like people are just shocked because they didn't know it existed. I think that's part of the fun of it. So I would sort of say, you know, maybe having it sort of as a hidden gem is a good thing. The oyster place, somebody mentioned it tonight.
Voyager.
Yeah, that's sort of like a hidden gem. People are surprised. I think it's part of the fun of it is that, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is here. It's sort of buried. It's not where you expect it. Which is sort of part of the reason I mentioned, like, I don't know, maybe a restaurant in the middle of that area, if it worked for parking and emergencies and everything else, could be cool. It would be sort of sad to zone it away, you know, off the bat. Yeah. But that's the answer. I'm not sure. I think Hilton is, I'm not sure you'd want Hilton to be the face of the district because of the kinds of buildings that are there and some of their limitations. I think they will improve and like this whole district, and maybe at some point it could be like a really cool street. But I think that it's sort of just a hidden gem to begin with. Might be the best way.
You've got the mural walls, though. I mean, if you want to think about a district gateway in terms of a definition with art, or like you've got the mural walls.
Yeah,
at,
we do.
At
We
696
do.
and at the train tracks, you know.
Right, we do. We think about that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's
you've
something.
got the two best walls in the neighborhood.
I really want to figure out how to integrate like an arts district into this, because I think it's a natural.
Yeah.
But I think you're, through the chair, dead on, because it's no surprise. I promote Ferndale a lot to friends and colleagues outside of the city. And, you know, recently we were talking about farm, fresh table, whatever. And I'm like, well, it's on Woodward Heights. And no one around the table knew what Woodward Heights was. Yeah, and so it is this little gem that you kind of discovered, and suddenly you're in Neverland, yeah.
But I think that's the fun of it.
Right.
I think
I don't think that it would be, I think it's farm field table.
Farm field table, yeah.
I think that if it were on 9 Mile, or if it were on Woodward, it would be completely different.
No, I don't disagree. I think our commission, though, is to make sure the sewers don't back up on it.
Yeah, right, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm not minimizing what you
Sure.
guys have to worry about, and I understand that, you know, it's easy for me to say have maximum flexibility in a zoning district. That's complicated too. I get it.
No, I
I'm
hope you
just
join the
saying
committee. I
that-
like your viewpoint a lot. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think one of the reasons that a place like Voyager works is that you've got sort of similar to what's evolving in a few places in this district, one business owner who owns a lot of parcels within a 3-block radius, right? So they were able to have that complementary evening use and park at their daytime building. So I shared with Justin, you know, because as the, good night, Joe, as the, and Joe, as the uses, or as the shared parking at Ferndale House, for example, kept expanding, I began to get a little more anxious, because if Ferndale Foods gets developed, what happens with that shared parking, and where does this all go? So, or maybe I shared with Aaron, actually, at our last meeting, Birmingham has a much stricter shared parking registration. You have to sort of, it's like registering a parking deed, and if you lose that parking, I mean, they're pretty serious. If you lose that parking use, you lose your permitted use. So just a thought as we're thinking about how to have the maximum flexibility in constricted built-out spaces, more formality around those shared uses, particularly where there's a shared owner, may help. Great. All right. This has been a really fun discussion. Yay. This is much more fun than a public hearing. Last call for thoughts or comments from the table or from the audience, but not last call, because there's going to be a committee. Commissioner Goring and then Stacy. Go ahead.
I do want to say that I really appreciate the mapping and the metrics. I think that's really important for this discussion. Actually have that visually and kind of have those numbers on there. I don't know if you have like building occupancy or anything like that, but that could be a good addition to the discussion. But really appreciate the work that went into that.
Final comment. Oh, come on up to the mic just so we get you on. Or
talk loud.
No, it won't pick you up. I'm sorry. Sorry. Or we could try to pass off the back. But thank you.
First of all, Justin, right?
Yes.
Can I get on that steering committee, or you got 2 people already? Or? I don't care. Either way.
Well, I think the other thing too is like, even if we limit it to 9 or 11 voters, like people like vote.
Right. A lot of people can be on it.
The entire group to join and
Right.
attend. So I want it to be collaborative.
And we want a mix of new and existing owners, right? And you've got a longer tenure in the district, so that's important.
The organic thing, this, if you can figure out, I mean, that's the way to go. I've always pictured it as a place that's going to be really cool to live there, work there, hang out there.
Yeah.
There's guys that, I mean, behind me, they play basketball at night. I mean, you know, it's just cool. And it's just a cool play. I don't play basketball, I'm too short, but of course I come home tired too. But the live-work thing is what I'm hoping to see there.
Yeah.
You know, walk to the brewery, and which we do now, and then we go home. But if you can live there and work there, and I like the artist feel that it's becoming. And he's absolutely right. Let it organically happen. Ferndale's cool. And we only want cool people there. Only cool people are going to live in there, you know, or work there. I mean, cool people are going to be there. So that's Ferndale.
Thank you. I don't know how to legislate cool, man. But we did it in downtown. So
We keep trying to decide what is Ferndale. What is the Ferndale feel?
yeah,
But
you've got
when
a
I
foot in a bunch of worlds.
when I moved into this area 14 years ago, we would come up from the freeway on 9 Mile or up 696. We would hit Hilton, we would turn to our street, and then we would leave the same way. And so that was, this area was kind of a little, same with the other area down by Wanda. This was a little bit of barrier getting into the rest of Ferndale. And I've watched it evolve, and I've watched it change quite a bit. Whereas from my place, I'm looking at walking up to Woodward and walking up to other restaurants, and it making it more neighborhood-like. So that's something I just thought that was kind of neat. One of the things that I was thinking about as everyone was talking and bringing cool, interesting places into this area, we still have a lot of trucks. I have at least one large delivery a week, and I know I'm a small potatoes concerning as well around other people. And we also have big lots and big parking areas where the trucks are parked there at night. So it seems like there's parking available, but it's a truck, so it's going to take about 5 parking spots. And of course, they own their own lots and they do that whole thing. But that is a big concern with a lot of the industrial and tradespeople in there. Didn't want to miss that, because if I have something going on, say next door to me is sold and it becomes a restaurant or a retail, I'm concerned with, and you brought it up when you were touring, I'm concerned with, I'm getting a big delivery in the middle of the day, and I've got really no turnaround space. So we have to think about how the trucks are going to deliver and how they're going to get into there. We have grown by we've doubled our employment to about 15 people, and we're adding a couple more people, so we're out of parking. So we asked our neighbor if we can use some of their parking, but they have trucks coming in every day. So they actually have to find parking for their people somewhere else, because it gets a little tight and dangerous. So I'd like to make sure we have that in our mix of how we're going to route all the trucks.
That's a great point.
Thank you. We just thought about it with Madison Heights Glass, and there have been some other street vacation and alley vacation conversations near this district. So I think the city's been thinking about how trucks maneuver, how people maneuver, and spaces where the two shouldn't intersect in a couple of very specific site plans recently. So thank you. Yeah.
I have the same issue with trucks.
Yeah.
The one side of street parking
right.
is an absolute necessity. Parking both sides. I left Royal Oak because I could not get out of my yard. Like, there was cars parking all the time. So one side is okay, but when two sides would be bad.
So the comment was that one side of the street parking, on some of these streets, particularly the narrower ones, probably, like I imagine it's probably more relevant on Grayson than on Wolcott, maybe, is important for navigation of semi-trucks, of deliveries, that parking at both sides of the streets could be a real hazard. Okay.
I wouldn't park my car on the side street on Wolcott. I wouldn't have a side concern.
Got it. Thank you. All right. It's about 8:15. This has been a really robust conversation. Thank you for hanging in with us. Thank you for sharing your contact information, for volunteering for the steering committee. I think we're going to have a great representation of people on that. I really look forward to your recommendations. I am so itching to be on it, but like holding back. So I just look forward to recommendations and finding the best way to let the organic evolution happen in sort of the safest and sort of reasonable way possible. Thank you. So we've got one more thing on the agenda tonight, and it relates to a number of conversations that we've had actually with Commissioner Williamson and things that have come back from the BZA. So a lot of these things that we see in our residential text amendments, which I don't have my agenda up, but I believe that's my next item, Justin. A number of items in my residential text amendments have to do with.
And just to interrupt for 1 second,
sure.
make sure that if you're interested in the steering committee, your email's on there. And even if you don't want to join the steering committee, just and you want to come to meetings and just listen for ones that you can join for, put your email on there and we'll reach out.
Thank you very much, everybody. So a lot of these have to do with some of the maybe nuisance items or items that when we met as a planning commission and a BZA, we heard the zoning board say, this is a real challenge, we want to approve it, but we can't approve it. Maybe there's a small change that you can make in the ordinance that would make a reasonable change possible. So we'll let you
Sure.
dive right into residential zoning ordinance amendments.
Sure, and I will go through these to the best of my ability. Our building official, who's been around since September at this point, he comes from a different community, and it's really good to get a different perspective on what other communities, and not that we need to be the same as another community, but when he notices inconsistencies or things that could be improved or things that align better with the building code, residential code.
Is that where front porches came from?
Yes.
Nice. All right, I like it.
So I'm taking a lot of his cues here, but also adding a few that I've seen through the BZA, and I think Ian, if he were here, he'd talk about a few of these as well. So I'll just take it from the top. So front porches. Obviously, I think it's something that we're trying to promote in all of our residential districts, and for probably sociological reasons and just keeping within the Ferndale character. But so counting front porches in lot coverage has, in some instances, turned out or made people discouraged from adding a front porch, or just not being able to get a variance in the end. So right now the ordinance requires that porches under 30 inches from grade do not count in lot coverage, which, for new buildings, that's really not as big of an issue because, they can design around that even if it's not ideally what they want. But there's so many existing structures in the city that there's definitely people that have shied away from adding a front porch, or the front porch of their dreams, I guess, because of this ordinance. So that's one that I think could clean up and opt to take front porches out of lot coverage. Obviously, front porch is a little different than, like, the open air is very different than enclosed. So enclosed porches, those count as living space. That would still remain as part of this. But I don't know if you want to
we can
talk about each one by one, or?
Yeah, why don't we just take them one by one? Any questions or comments on front porches and lot coverage?
This is good.
So when you say enclosed porches, you mean walls, not roof, right?
Right. Yes.
So if it's covered, it's
covered's
still,
okay.
Okay.
Yep.
My question was about permeability. So if I've got a porch that's just on pilings and it's still permeable underneath, to me that's different in terms of lot coverage than building something that's got a slab and is not brick up the side and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Any reason that we should think that deeply about it? I also have a completely unpermitted patio in my backyard, so I really have no lot coverage like this standing here. But permeability was my only question. Are we adding more impermeable surface, or is it small enough and front porches are important enough that we don't?
I think it's small enough and important enough that I wouldn't make it more complex than it needs to be. That's just my gut reaction.
I don't make things overly complex.
No, I'm not saying just.
No, I do.
Just keep it simple.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Is that clear direction?
That makes sense.
Sounds good. Next.
So residential fence height,
That's one.
which
Crazy. I would love a front porch.
I think we've debated this a lot internally. But so in residential districts, the max height for a fence is 6 feet. In the rear yard, they're not allowed to extend beyond the front building setback. If they are, they're limited to 4 feet on the side yard. Or excuse me, they are limited to 4 feet on the side yard. So you have a lot of people building 6 feet, then it goes down 4 feet. I don't work with fence companies that often. The common complaint I've heard is just that 4 feet fences are not quite as standard as 6 feet. I don't know if anybody else has experience on the
My
board.
experience is nobody listens to this. We've got 6-foot fences all over the place.
It's
no setback.
Yeah. So
That was actually my only question was, what's the setback from the sidewalk still going to be? Are you still, if we're 6 feet tall, are we still not extending past the building line?
Right. Still, yeah, I would still not want to extend past front. Yep.
I'm fine with it. I just don't want it to come so far forward that I can't navigate my driveway and see
Sure.
my neighbors.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay.
Kids.
And the other, I guess, additional
I'd like
note
to not
is
see
that
kids.
because I think apparently there used to be a fence permit, and then it went away.
A board of fence appeals.
Fence appeals.
Okay.
Been there, done that.
That is a job. How do you get on that?
Fences, good neighbors,
The ones
right?
that were on it didn't know why they were on it.
Right.
either.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
And then it went away, and but we've been talking more and more because there are so many people building fences.
We're
that-
not bringing back a fence appeals board.
Well, maybe not fence appeals board, but would
Okay.
we consider the fence permit? You'll see it on the fee schedule proposed in the future, but probably more discussion on that. But we've just seen so many non-compliant fences built that people just say, "Well, you told me I can't do this, but my neighbor did it," and I'm like,
Right.
"Well, there's no building permit or fence permit required." So,
Got it.
I mean, the fence we saw earlier was not in compliance. Well, a couple of reasons. It's not on their property. And the other one is wherever it went, be in front of the back of the building line, where that building started, it should have dropped down to 4 feet.
yep, yeah, prime example.
All right. Well, I got to replace my fence in the spring, so I'd like to see this in the summer.
My only concern was with the building line and navigability. And
I think that's.
do you have a fence question? You came up for fences.
I wasn't planning on talking about fences, but actually,
Yeah. Will you grab the mic that's right in front of you? Yeah, just come on up.
Might need to turn it on.
Or to take a seat, either way.
Yeah, right.
All right, so this is Mr. Silverman, yes? Yes, thank you. Yep.
So my property had a fence that went approximately, I don't know, maybe 10 feet. It started about 10 feet deeper than my front porch.
Okay.
And I was looking because I was thinking about, maybe a dog one day, yada, yada, yada. So I went around, I was searching for ordinances and documentation. Well, I ended up going with having to adhere to what I thought was the ordinance. So I've got a 6-foot tall fence for most of the lot directly between me and the neighbor. Well, I wanted to enclose it, so that part, it looks a little goofy because it is 4 feet.
Right. And that's what we're talking about now, just allowing you to keep the 6 foot going to the front of your
Wish I
house.
could go back in time.
Yeah, I have
Fair.
to say, I think
fair.
this should be 6 foot. Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Any strong objections to the 6 foot?
Makes sense.
Great.
I'm sorry, I don't have a time machine. Working to fix it going forward.
Thank you for complying, I guess, with what was allowed at the time. Architectural features. This one is a little bit, I think, straightforward in that there's just a separate listing for bays, bay windows, chimneys, and eaves, separate from architectural features. Our thought is that those should be combined into just the architectural feature allowances, and then also allowing for window wells. Though I'm sure people have been building them, they're not explicitly mentioned in the ordinance, and so this would just clarify. And
For egress windows?
right, but in allowing for a 3-foot projection into the yards,
Okay.
which I admit I'm not
For
an
something
expert.
like an egress window?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So Commissioner Goring, did you have?
Well, I guess I just was wondering for clarification on the fence one, but I don't need to go on it for too long. But on those corner lots where the fence is up against the sidewalk, I don't know if there's anything that needs to be changed there or not, but the fence can be built right up exactly to the sidewalk as is my understanding. Or
Well, I think there's. Are you talking about a fence with wood slats, or are you talking about like a landscape feature that is like the split rail stuff?
I'm thinking maybe the typical fence, with the
Privacy fence?
Yeah.
I mean, it still can't. Well, I guess corner lots, right? I don't think it can go right to the sidewalk. I guess it just depends on the corner.
Okay. Yeah, and it's just within the setbacks already. No,
Yeah.
it's not the setbacks there.
Right. I mean, I can think of 3 non-compliant corner fences, which actually made us decide, okay, we need to maybe require a permit, but
yeah. That would be my only consideration if you're talking about the fences, just to make sure that that part of it's not missed.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Chair, I know there was a lot of discussion on that before, and it kind of was along the lines of air conditioners and corner lots too. But I would look to maybe other districts or other experience. I'm sure there's a lot of precedent set, maybe just to see if that's a special issue or if we need to have a statement about that. So it's consistent.
About corners?
And I know we don't have any fences in the front yard. I know some historical districts are allowing, like a low, more of a decorative type fence.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we want to wade into the weeds on any of that, but I know a lot of those areas have those low fences in the front yard, and right now it's not permitted in Ferndale. So in some ways it's restricting how people use their front yards because maybe they're concerned for dogs, kids, you name it else. So I don't know if that needs to be addressed or not, but I did notice that with the fence.
I've told plenty of people no on those, but
yeah,
that was just because of the
no,
order.
that's the way it's written for
right.
sure. And it's you drive around, nobody has them out there.
Right.
So maybe that's good enough as it is.
It's kind of a aesthetic preference to you all. I mean,
I'd keep them out, to be honest with you, because when you open the door, there's a lot of cheap, decorative
for sure
crap. So I'd continue to ban them.
There we have it.
Okay.
I think I'd be in agreement too. I just wanted to make sure. That
Yeah,
since
it's
we're talking fences, we talk all the way through fences.
Good to bring up.
Thank you. In architectural features, I looked to my architects on this commission. Does this consolidation make sense to you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's already covered in the architectural features definition, so it's just a redundancy at this point.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you very much.
We briefly mentioned this one before, but
Important one.
It was only in discussion. I didn't write anything last time that went along with it, but so obviously we have some side yard setbacks to 5 feet that are required in residential. We've had a few variances, at least in my time, of people wanting to expand because they want to stay in Ferndale. At least these are the reasons that we're hearing anyway, and it allows them to. It's more affordable to build on the existing house than look for a new house that has a bigger property. So to encourage the expansion, we were considering allowing additions on existing footprints of buildings that could be less restrictive if there's an existing condition, but similar to the accessory buildings setback that we talked about last month, they would have to have fire-rated construction. I believe that's another item that's already in the residential code, but I think it would help the affordability within Ferndale and allowing families to grow, which have been the 3 BZA applications I have heard is that growing families applying for additions. So
We definitely heard this at the joint meeting with the BZA.
yeah, right.
Questions, comments about if already existing and non-compliant is the word I'm looking for. Non-conforming. Non-compliant. Non-conforming. And this specifically relates to second floor additions, or does this refer to blowing up the back of your first floor too?
We were really just looking at second floor, but if anybody has opinions on
Most houses in Ferndale, they'll require you to blow out the first floor if you're going to add on to the second.
there's some one-stories that, or not one-stories, but homes that, I guess if you blow out the second, you would still have to come in, come in 5 feet.
Right.
So, I'm not an architect.
Through the chair, my only thought on that, it makes perfect sense, and that's the best use of the property. And I don't know if there's an answer, but our last meeting, we were talking about setbacks and impact of, cutting off daylight from the adjacent property, and you might be changing your neighbor's quality of life by raising your building. I don't know if it means it's a case-by-case basis, which is basically what the zoning
right.
BZA does. So I don't know if there's a middle ground or a way to weigh the impact. I would say maybe if you look at the total setback between that building and the adjacent building, maybe there's a rule of thumb or a guideline that if if there's a maximum of, a minimum of 12 feet, or, some distance to be able to build up so that you're really not impacting that property from the quality of air and light that they have now.
I think we address it with a 30-foot privacy fence.
30 foot, okay.
So I was trying to picture this, and I was thinking, let's say you've got, two-story colonial, and you've got some addition that was put on in the 60s that's now non-conforming, and it's 3 feet from the line, and they bumped out the family room or the breakfast room or whatever, right? And so now you want to just put master bedroom on top of it, like that. That I get. What I wondered if this would encourage, and that's why I asked, should we just not make it irrespective of stories, is are you now going to get the little 2-story bungalow in the Dales that has to put an addition on the 2nd story out the back and have like pillars and a patio down at like that? I don't know. You want to go out the bottom. That's crazy cost prohibitive to go out the top. So what are we accomplishing? We're allowing for reasonable, use of something that's already non-conforming. I get the 2nd story on top of the 1st story that already doesn't conform, but why wouldn't we, if your structure is already non-conforming and you're not at your maximum lot coverage, not just allow you to keep going back on your 1st floor?
So building
what's
out
the
instead of
difference?
building up.
Yeah. So if your house is is already non-conforming and you're 3 feet away from or 4, less than 5, why do we care if you extend the 1st floor or the 2nd floor?
Yeah, and if they meet lot coverage,
right,
then
I think the way I've read this is that if you're going on the 2nd floor and we're allowing it within the 3 foot instead of the 5 foot, it's only over the existing footprint. It's not. It can't extend on the 2nd floor beyond that. So I don't think it would encourage that on the 2nd floor, and more than an expansion on the 1st. That's the way I read it.
I mean, that's what the.
So the 2nd floor only if it's over the 1st floor.
Yeah, it's only over the existing building footprint. Yeah.
And then why would we not just allow you to follow the existing building wall and build back?
Would we? I mean, then I guess then would we allow? Should we just change the side setback to 3 feet then, though? Maybe.
If you're already non-conforming.
If you're non-conforming.
That's my question. Is why wouldn't we?
I think because it's relatively easy to set your 1st floor 2 feet back. To do a jog at your 1st floor.
Okay, so it's not a hardship
if
you're just adding on to the back.
And if it really needed to come and get a variance, they could do that. But yeah, it's not that hard to, if you're adding on 5, 10 feet, whatever, to tuck in another 2.
To bring it into compliance.
Okay. Do you have any ballpark of percentage of homes in Ferndale that are in the 3 foot, not 5 foot?
I wish
that this is done with. I mean, is this a really extensive thing, or is it?
I mean, I will say we have told many people over the phone or in person this, but I don't have a number. But I've only seen 3 variance applications in my 3 years. But that could be because between the building department and myself, we've said no, or you're not going to be successful. It's tough to say. I would love that data. I don't know if Oakland County has that data in their
Actually,
GIS.
The building footprints you could probably overlay on the parcels.
We can look into that.
Thanks for helping me talk that through. That makes a lot more sense now.
And I think the way this is written, it's pretty clear and it makes sense to be able to go up on the existing line, but if you're going back, you stay conforming. It makes a lot of sense.
Is there a requirement to renovate the 1st floor wall in question to be 1 hour rated?
Oh, I see. Okay. I don't know. I can find out.
I guess my concern there is that if you have the 1st floor with no rating, and that burns away, then the 2nd floor just tips over. So you're not necessarily. I don't know if that's a concern or not.
By touching, you'd have to bring that wall, that facade into compliance.
So the whole facade. Yeah.
And that would be our hope, our
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm thinking. So, yeah, I don't know if that makes another hardship, because now you have to tear that whole wall down to,
Or at least add on to it. Or if you're changing the siding or doing something so that you have to unite that
Sure.
facade anyway, you'd have to touch it
Sure.
and add to it.
Or confirm that it is already
Or-
fire rate
yeah.
or something. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, we can look into that. Makes sense.
I wonder if the fire marshal's got thoughts on that. from the
Yeah.
community.
We don't have a fire marshal.
Forgot about that.
We take it to the chief now.
Okay, I forgot about that. All right, are we clear on direction on?
Yep.
Great.
Good? All right.
Swimming pools.
Swimming pools. It's our ordinance that says you can't have a swimming pool.
Pretty much. Essentially what it says.
It's so
yeah.
funny
There's
when
no
you read it.
possible
I was
way.
like, really?
We
That's
should just say that.
Right.
All
I
the
mean,
pools in my neighborhood aren't in compliance.
yeah, I was gonna say it's another instance where I think no one has complied with this.
And they're separate. They're in separate.
Right.
So this is the kind of administrative minutia I absolutely hate, but I'm going to ask the question. Define a swimming pool. Are we talking about like the pop-up jobs you can get at Home Depot now
There
that
is a
you take down?
definition of swimming pool.
Yeah,
Or are we
there's
just talking about in-ground?
there are like
Size
8 definitions I think in the ordinance, from
Okay.
kiddie pool to in-ground to
Kiddie pool counts?
I think it's in there. Yeah, there might be a separate
There's
qualification for it,
definite
but
size. Yeah.
but yeah,
qualifies for a kiddie pool versus a swimming pool. Wow.
there might be a different
I'm quite certain. it's
distance
all
requirement. I'm sure no one's following any of these unless they submit for a permit.
Yeah.
So, which there may have been a different, between building officials on what was
Well,
the
and
intent of the ordinance and things like that.
You know,
but-
in the era before the Home Depot pool,
Right.
you know, this was something that was a much bigger deal and was.
I
permanent.
think in the evolution of swimming pool technology, I think, yeah, we got to relook at this. Otherwise, let's just say no swimming pools in Ferndale.
right.
So, what's your question here, Justin?
just a
I understand we've got it in 2 different places, and basically we're zoning it out of existence accidentally.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, the accessory buildings ordinance was from like 2008 or 10, and then swimming pools was from the 70s. So, accessory buildings has superseded the old ordinance, but I think we could probably just add a distance in here. I understand. I think the intent was to not permit 5 sheds on a lot. I don't think they were thinking about pools at the time, and so I think this is easily cleaned up. But I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything.
What's the setback, not setback, but what's the distance requirement on our chicken coops? There's a logic to my madness, but
Yeah,
is
I'm
it 10
not
feet?
sure.
There is one.
I mean, that's the normal accessory building like distance.
There
I
for
think
that.
so.
Yep. So was I.
Yeah, I would assume 10 feet.
The chicken coop has to be 10 feet from an accessory.
It has to, yeah, there's a
Including
requirement.
garage?
Yes, especially a garage. I don't know if that it's 10 feet, but I know it's
Put
there.
your own property.
Unless it's different from this ordinance, it should. If it's
I don't think it's 25 feet, otherwise we'd have no chicken coops.
Right.
So, some consistency there maybe.
Yeah.
There's some guidance there.
okay.
Yeah.
Just, I didn't know if anyone on the commission had a history on this and if there was a specific
Not
reason.
here in the 70s.
Ditto.
I meant more the accessory portion. But
Oh. My only concern with the pools that I see in my neighborhood is how many are under power lines. It makes me really, really nervous that people use poor judgment, and I don't know that you can regulate judgment. So,
The pools under power lines bother me less than the trampolines under power lines. And those
I
exist
haven't
too.
seen one yet, I guess. Other questions or comments on swimming pools in this consolidation, or looking at making distances between accessory uses, buildings or structures consistent?
I mean,
The direction you need from us on that one?
yeah, that's great. I mean, it could be as simple as just swimming pools can be 6 feet.
Yeah.
Doesn't apply to the 25 feet.
Okay.
So, okay.
Or whatever's reasonable with
Yeah.
the chicken coops and other
Right.
other little accessories.
Oh, if it's good enough for the chickens, I mean, it's good enough for the kids.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty. So we are sorry. Let me get back to We are now to administrative items. Anything this evening from Justin or Aaron?
We're just still pursuing the downtown ordinance update. I did schedule a public hearing for the 21st. If the ordinance is not ready, we will postpone it, but it seems on track. The city attorney reviewed it, Michael and the Downtown Design Committee reviewed it last night. Sounds like that, or the feedback we got was pretty good. I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, I would say it was good. There were some comments that
Sure.
I think probably should be addressed.
Yep.
For one was expanding the urban flex up and down Woodward to encapsulate all of the TOD, I think, or at least the DDA district. And some conversations about front setbacks again. So.
And I think those were all great. Barry relayed those to us. My only and we're going to explore that, obviously, expanding the urban flex, and it may be a month after or something like that. Probably needs more study, but we did wonder if we did expand urban flex, that would mean you could have townhouses on Woodward. It's a little different setback. Do we want townhouses on Woodward? I've seen it other places on Woodward. Sometimes it looks good, sometimes not. But
Well, they're already
We
there,
already have
right?
it on
For
Pleasant
Pleasant Ridge
Ridge.
as townhouses.
right.
Royal Oak.
I don't like front doors where people don't use them, but that's just me.
No, that's
So-
valid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get townhouses.
I tend to agree. I think it was a matter of maybe not fully understanding what is permitted in the urban flex.
Fair.
And that may be why it seemed logical just to say this should be urban flex as opposed to a third district, I guess. or
Right.
Third category.
Okay.
Would it be different if it was a? Oh, never mind. Irrelevant question. Already permitted. Never mind.
Okay. Well, we're still going to explore that, and I mean, if you look at the master plan for the future land use west of Livernois, that's urban residential. Maybe it makes sense to continue with urban flex that way. Further study is needed, but
I could even see it getting incorporated into MXD in some ways. It's real similar in
Yeah.
some ways.
So we're still plugging along. Hope, like I said, February 21st, and then that would make for end of March at council if we're all comfortable, and if not, we will continue to work on it.
And our consultants haven't abandoned us yet.
No,
She was mad at us last time.
I don't know about that, but no, I mean the meeting afterward, we felt like we got the answers we needed. So yeah, I don't know.
Mad.
I didn't think she was mad.
Bouncing up and down.
Yeah, there was some anger there.
She was like
Yeah.
rocking back and forth and bouncing up and down.
Said something about Wapner at 7. She was back and forth.
All right. Any other congratulations and absentia to Vice Chair Carr and to BZA liaison? Well, on baby too. I was thinking his
Yes.
election, but on fatherhood, and also to BZA liaison Williamson. I'm excited to be your chair again. I've in several meetings recently used the phrase, and I'm the chair of the Planning Commission in Ferndale. Yeah, like it. So I don't know if everyone knows, but I've got a new job and I'm back in the planning world. I don't think there's anything right now that presents any sort of conflict. Any construction that we're doing is in Detroit right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the future there was some project in Ferndale that I had to step back on in terms of housing development. So I'll just make sure to make that declaration loud and clear. Cool. All right, then we shall adjourn. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Nice job.
Where's the new job? Gig?
So I am the executive director of a small